Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, A Day in the Life of an Agency Developer. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Brenda. I am the Community Manager for the Grow with Google Scholarship Program here at Udacity. And today I'm joined by Adam, Brett, and John, who will be sharing more about their developer agencies. And they'll also be sharing who they work for, the type of projects they're working on, and what their day-to-day work looks like. Before we get started, I wanted to give Adam, Brett, and John a chance to introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about why they are joining us today. So we'll kick it off with Adam. Adam, welcome. Would you mind sharing what agency you work for, your current role, and how long you've been there?
Sure, absolutely. It's great to be here today. My name's Adam Talcott, and I'm at YMediaLabs. We're in Redwood City, California, in the heart of Silicon Valley, maybe a little north of the heart. And I've been with YML for about 3 years, a little over 3 years. And I basically work with strategy and design teams here to during the early phases of client engagement, and also oversee engineering efforts and try to understand clients' technology infrastructure.
Fantastic, thank you. And I'll pass the mic now to Brett. Brett, can you share the agency you work for, your current role, and how long you've been in your current position?
Sure. Hi. Yes, my name is Brett McCormick. Thanks for having me. I work for a agency in North Texas called Bottle Rocket Studios. It's in a town called Addison, which is perhaps the restaurant capital of Texas. So it's really nice to work here. And I've worked at Bottle Rocket for 6 years now.
And John, we'd love to hear from you as well. What's your current role? How long have you been working with Willow Tree? And what types of projects does your agency focus on?
Sure. So my name is John Nye. I'm a senior engineer here at Willow Tree. I mainly focus on Android, and I've been here for a total of about 5 years. I also do some interviewing stuff, so I'm excited to share a little bit about that if we have some time. And that about covers it.
Fantastic. So thank you all again for being here and for sharing with our students. We really appreciate it. So I'm going to dive right in with the rest of our questions, and if we can keep this order, we'll get started. So Adam, can you kick us off by answering this first question? What is unique about being an agency developer?
So for me, the big thing I love about working in an agency is variety. I get to work on a wide variety of projects, different customers, different kinds of projects, be it mobile or web or Internet of Things or drones. The variety is really kind of the main thing. And also because there's a wide variety of opportunities, plenty of opportunities to learn. I mean, I think if you speak to most engineers, what they'll say they're looking for is opportunities to continue to learn. And that's one thing that is required, really, of engineers, is this constant love of learning. And we get plenty of opportunities to do that here. And finally, I'd say also autonomy. If I see a problem, I know that I have the support of my colleagues, my peers, and management to go off and try to figure out a solution, which really is empowering. And I feel like I can really have a big impact by looking at these kinds of things.
That's really good to hear. I think that we just had Career Week, and we're telling students that to really kind of prioritize what qualities are, what things are important for them when they're looking for the job. And I think autonomy and is really an important one. Brett, can I ask you the same questions? What is unique about being an agency developer?
Well, kind of echo what Adam said. The variety is a really great part of it. When I first started Android development at this company 6 years ago, I worked on like ABC News and Food Network's app, all like native Android apps. Worked on Eclipse IDE back then. And as time goes on, methodologies evolve, and it's really nice to be able to work on new projects and new work, and it's fun and challenging. And each project lasts maybe 6 months to a year, and then we'll get allocated to different projects sometimes depending on the need. So I've probably been on 10 to 15 projects during my tenure, like client-facing projects, and there's even more like internal projects we have. But yeah, I'd say I would guess I would echo the variety is one of the neatest things about working in an agency. Always kind of working on the latest and greatest, and it's fun. It's just fun.
Wow, Food Network, that's very impressive.
Yeah, that was one of my first ones.
That's very cool. And John, now it's over to you. What is the unique about being an agency developer?
Sure. So I'll echo some of the sentiments from Adam and Brett. Variety is a huge one. You're going to get to work with clients in lots of different verticals and with lots of different priorities and needs. Getting to start new projects is always a nice thing. You always get to work with the latest technology stacks and try new things. To kind of expand a little bit, it's always interesting to grow relationships with these new clients, figure out what they really need, kind of build trust over time and really get to be experts for them and kind of see what really makes their organization tick and really eventually start kind of being able to predict their needs. And it's just fun to watch that relationship grow and kind of foster that.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, this next question I'm really interested in hearing your answers to, and that is, what is the coolest project you've worked on or client you've worked with? Adam, we'll start with you.
So this is a hard one to answer. I mean, in a sense, there's lots of cool things in all the different projects. If we're, helping nurses navigate their careers, or helping an insurance company with helping a customers, get the help when they need it. Or even working with a customer that has a head-mounted display that we had to interface with. For me, one of the coolest ones was we did work for PayPal, and that they had a Super Bowl commercial a couple years ago. So they were going to be spending, millions of dollars on a minute-long commercial, and the idea was hopefully they'll be bringing a lot of customers in. So the onboarding experience needed to work well. So we were part of that team implementing their onboarding experience. And it was really exciting to have a lot of work that led up to the moment of the Super Bowl commercial launch, which I got to be a part of, which was really exciting and really cool.
How long were you working on that project for?
That was probably about 4 months, I would think.
Nice long project. And Brett, what about you? What is the coolest project you've worked on or the client you've worked with?
Let's see. So I'll start with an internal project we did at BottleRock. We have a once-a-year hackathon we do where we get to branch out and do things that are totally unrelated to what we actually get paid to do. So one of the neatest things we built for that is a Nerf gun that we outfitted with some rotors, and we put an Arduino and a Raspberry Pi onto it, and we could then control it with a cell phone, with an Android app or a USB joystick, and you could shoot people with it. So that's totally unrelated, something you probably wouldn't expect to hear me say something about. But it's really neat. Got to work with Python a little bit. But as far as client work we've done, one of the neatest things I did was work with. We put on the Southwest Airlines project. I was a big part of the boarding pass on the Google Pay app integration, which is it's a pretty popular feature nowadays, and turns out to be something that a lot of people like. It's really fun to work with Contact Google and of course Southwest Airlines, and that was a lot of fun. That particular feature lasted about a month, I'd say.
I'm still trying to get over that Nerf gun project. Amazing.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
And John, what was the coolest project you've worked on or client you've worked with?
Sure. So we had a company called Valpak as a client who sends primarily these little blue envelopes in the mail with coupons for people, and they wanted to roll out a augmented reality feature. This was back in 2013, before the advent of some of these frameworks like ARCore and ARKit that really made augmented reality a lot more accessible. So that particular feature was, it was really a serendipitous confluence of I had just learned OpenGL prior to this project coming up, and it was just a really great coincidence of getting to iterate on this and being we have the tools and expertise to fix this for you. And it was really exciting that I got to take something I was personally interested in and kind of use it for a client project. So that was a lot of fun. We iterated on it. There was a lot of nice collaboration between myself, the client, and our iOS platform, and it was just a lot of fun.
What I love most about all of your answers is it really shows the variety of clients and the variety of projects that you have access to and available to you. So very cool. So our next question, what do you like about working at your particular developer agencies? So Willow Tree, YMediaLabs, and Bottle Rocket Studios. Adam, let's start with you.
So again, it really comes down to the variety of things I get to work on. And it's really, one of the things that initially attracted me to YML was just the quality of the team. The people I get to work with, I mean, people talk about this all the time, and really the best way to sort of elevate your abilities and your skills is to work with people who are better than you, right? If you're the best person in the room, then odds are you're probably not going to be growing as much as you may like. So finding a team that really pushes you and gives you those opportunities to push yourself and go outside your comfort zone, but know that you have the support, that if things don't quite go the way you want, you still have that support of the team. That's really what one of the things that drew me to YML and keeps me here now. The team really is committed to doing great work and really making our customers shine. That's really what it's all about. We want our customers to be successful, and that's kind of in the DNA of what we do here. Also, work-life balance. You do get an opportunity. That's really important. Just understood that, obviously people have a life outside of work, and that needs to get attention. But while we want to do the best we can, obviously for our customers and for each other, our peers, our everyone else, we understand that we've got that support structure at home that also needs support. So those are some of the things that really attract me and keep me here at YML.
Definitely. And I love your advice too about, working with others that are going to push you to become your best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brett, I would love to hear, what do you like about working at Bottle Rocket Studios?
Let's see, a lot. I really like the learning culture, right? So the Nerf gun thing is something like totally wouldn't expect. So that's like a once a year thing we'll do. And just, there's a lot of push, I guess, for engineers to better themselves, whether it's through going to local conferences or, attending the local GDG meetup group, which Bottle Rocket actually hosts the Android GDG group once a month. And we actually have one this week coming up talking about Android architecture components. So see you there. And what else? I guess, learning culture is one of the biggest things. And just the people in general, working with a lot of smart people, a lot of engineers. We work with strategists, just like Adam, and we work with project management, and our agency's got creative staff and QA, and we also do a lot of iOS work. So just being exposed to all these different disciplines is refreshing and always nice to mix things up a bit, I guess.
And lastly, John, what do you like about working at Willow Tree Apps?
Sure. So I get asked this question a lot because, as I mentioned before, I do some interviewing stuff. So candidates ask me a lot, and my answer is always the people. In general, Willow Tree, we try to get people who are, focused on our customer needs and success for them. There's a lot of accountability and humbleness, and people are always eager to share their knowledge and make everyone better, basically.
That sounds like a great environment. Okay, so this is a two-part question. The first part is, how did you get started as a developer? And the second I would love to know is, how did you find your way to your current developer agency? So, Adam?
Okay, so everyone should pack a lunch because this is going to be a long story. So my career, well, I started programming on an Apple II Plus. I'll let you guys guess the century that was, or the decade. So I started programming on Apple II Plus at that time. Believe it or not, this was before the World Wide Web existed. And you would get magazines with programs in them, right? In BASIC or assembly, and you would type the programs out of the magazine for different games and things like that. And then, you know, that was fun, but then, hey, what would happen if I changed this? What would happen if I changed that? And that's really how I learned to program. So I've been programming for a very long time. My career took some interesting sort of paths. I studied electrical engineering in college, got a PhD in computer architecture, and ended up doing microprocessor design and development at IBM, Sun Microsystems, and Cisco. And then in 2008, Apple released the iPhone. Then there's just the iPhone SDK. And I started dabbling on the side with iPhone apps. And it was something I really loved. I've been doing microprocessor design for about 10 or 15 years at that point. And decided I want to take the plunge and start doing mobile development. So I launched out on my own little business. I was doing sales and development, which is one thing I love about YML. I don't have to worry about the sales. There are other people to bring in the work. And then did some other companies along the way, a shopping search engine that was acquired by Facebook, some other kinds of things, and ended up found YML and really found an opportunity to get the kind of work I wanted to do and not have to worry about, again, the sales portion of it. So it was really sort of a mobile development that kind of got me where I am now.
Great career history there.
Yeah, it's been an interesting and fun path.
And Brett, how did you get started as a developer, and how did you find your way to Bottle Rocket Studios?
Right, so that is a loaded question. I always knew that I was going to do software development or something in computers, really. Since primary school, it's just always kind of like, computers are magical, video games were fun, how does it work? Nobody knows. And so it's something I wanted to learn more about. So every chance I got, I would take classes about it in high school or college. I guess the first computer class I took was like a webmastering class. We learned like HTML tags, and back then Macromedia Flash was cool and Dreamweaver. And then followed up later in high school, I took some Java programming courses, which is still obviously relevant in the Android field today. And moving on to college, I went to a 2-year school. If anybody's local to North Texas, you might know what Collin College is. I went there for 2 years. Then I transferred to University of North Texas in Denton. And that's where I majored in information technology is the degree I took. And there I did a lot of projects, and that's when Android really started taking off. And anything I could sort of think of, I would just try and make a little project about it. Then one of the biggest projects I did, and that I would bring to my resumes with me and job interviews, was we wrote like a GPS tracker app specifically for use with public transit systems, like buses typically. And being a college student, I was using buses all the time, and I wanted to make it better because I never knew where they were, and they were always late. And it's like, where are they? So we made a little project, and we used that project for our 2-year capstone, our 2-semester capstone course. And we worked closely with Denton County Transit Authority, asked them what they wanted, and they were like our client. And one of the executives there would come to our once a semester presentations or demo what we did, and we put the phones on the bus and everything. It was a big project. So I used that project later when I started looking around for work. I actually met a Bottle Rocket employee at an AT&T hackathon in Plano, and she introduced me to the recruiter for Bottle Rocket, and then that just kind of got the ball rolling. And I interned at Bottle Rocket in May of 2012, I believe. And the rest is history. After that, they offered me a job, and I graduated that winter, and here I've been ever since, I guess. So it's been fun. Projects, I guess.
And great to know, too, that internship turned into a full-time position, too, for those of us students who are internships right now.
That is actually it happens a lot, at least at this company. Our interns end up coming back as full-time hires. So a lot of times it's kind of about that first foot in the door, I guess, and can turn into more. So it worked out.
Yeah, fantastic. And John, how did you get started as a developer? We'd love to hear your career story and how you ended up at Willow Tree Apps.
Sure. So my story is kind of similar. It started at a somewhat young age. I was into video games, and I always wondered, you know, how do they make that work? It turns out video games are hard. For some reason, I always thought I wanted to be an ophthalmologist, and that programming was just a nice hobby. And then come senior year of high school, when it was time to start thinking about college and what I wanted to study, I realized that, hey, maybe there's a career in this because I really like doing it. So, you know, I went to community college here in Central Virginia and transferred to four-year school at University of Virginia. My entry into mobile is a little bit less traditional. It's not so much a fairy tale. I graduated school in 2011, and the job market was tight. So I came to Willow Tree. This was back when we were very small. I was probably employee number in the late teens or early 20s. And they had a Craigslist ad up. So that was kind of the state of recruiting then. And, you know, back then Willow Tree mainly branded itself as a native apps development company. And we also did web and stuff, but native was really the bread and butter. And I didn't even own a smartphone. I was broke. So it was really, I think, just kind of what kind of changed their mind about me was I had a passion project that I was working on during while I was looking for jobs. And it was OpenGL, to kind of circle back to that, you know, most memorable project that I worked on. So I think that was really kind of what showed them, you know, I was serious and motivated. And yeah, I think that about explains it.
Thank you for sharing that. I think one huge takeaway that I got from all the stories is really how important a project, you know, whether it be like a personal project or just, you know, a past work project, plays in helping you acquire this role. Yeah. Okay, so our next question is, what does your agency look for in developers, and what are some helpful skill sets that new or junior developers should be looking to acquire and to feature in their portfolios? Adam?
Sure. So Brett and John have kind of echoed some of this before, but really a lot of what we do is we collaborate with others. And obviously you need to have a solid foundation in the programming and software engineering, really understand those foundational skills. But specific technologies, the technologies you're using now, you may or may not be using in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. So be prepared that basically someone who the love of learning is important, because again, you need to learn these new skills when they become available, new technologies. So having a solid foundation, but also being able to, you know, it's one thing to write software on your own, right? You may get into an argument with yourself, but hopefully you can resolve that pretty quickly. But it's the collaboration and communication with others that really is key, and it is sometimes an overlooked skill of software engineers and developers. You know, there's unfortunately the stereotype of the developer that's not really around communication and talking, loners, those kinds of things. Those are stereotypes. My experience, obviously, some of those people are there and they can have good careers, but to really succeed and do well, it's the communication and collaboration. And you mentioned already sort of these projects. I mean, that's the great thing about the time we live in now. They're open source projects you can get involved in, because really the key for people hiring is, you know, when I'm hiring developers, I want to see your source code, right? I want to see the kind of code you write. I want to talk with you, see what it's like to collaborate and work with you, but also want to get a sense for the kind of code you write. And I want to talk with you about that. So this is a great way for me to understand how you approach the collaboration side of it, and also how you approach a software engineering mindset. So it's a great point to have a project that you can go and show people that they can see and touch and use, and then actually dive into the source code and talk about that in a way that shows your understanding and can touch on all those communication and collaboration. But you need those foundational developers, software engineering skills that you can build on and use throughout your career as the technologies change.
Yes. Evaluation is such an important part of any job too. So Okay, Brett, what does your agency, Bottle Rocket Labs, look for in developers, and what are some helpful skill sets that new or junior developers should be looking to acquire and to feature in their portfolios?
So I would echo a little bit what Adam said. Good foundation, a good strong coding background. If you're applying for a developer role, there's many roles available at a company like ours. We've had plenty of staff switch roles too. Some have started as QA or Android or iOS, and they like rotate. So that's interesting to watch people's evolution there. Education is part of it, but it doesn't, like, my story included a bachelor's program, but it doesn't necessarily have to. We've hired plenty of people that have figured out how to code in other ways outside of going through an educational path. And we've also hired developers who've gone through the Udacity program, as a matter of fact. And so sometimes sometimes it doesn't really matter how you get there, as long as you get there. You figure out what you're doing and you're good at it. And the other thing I would say is, when you're in school or what have you, you turn your code in and your professor grades it and they review your code. That never stops. 100% of our code is all reviewed. We use a system called pull requests for that. And so, it's weird for some developers feel, I guess, a little vulnerable, or taking people's feedback about your code is something some developers have a hard time with. What I'm trying to say is you'll need to be able to accept positive and constructive feedback and provide that feedback to other developers around you. It's all about being a learning culture. It's never really somebody attacking you. That's never how it is. It's just they're trying to help you become a better developer, and accepting their feedback is a big part of it. And we've had some instances where people aren't a good fit because accepting feedback and working with other people is hard for them to do. Yeah, and then let's see, the second question was, what should developers look for to add to their portfolios? Yeah, I guess anything that you are interested in, that whatever will best hold your attention. Sometimes it's hard for somebody like, just because this technology is the latest and greatest, like I better go learn that. Like, it's hard to keep up with that sometimes, especially if you're new. I mean, I've got several people I know that they can barely get Java under control, and then Kotlin comes along and just boots Java out of the way. Like, this is a new thing now, and it's hard for some new developers to keep up with all that. So I'd say whatever, and certainly Kotlin is important. We use Kotlin every day in the Android discipline. But whatever can really hold your interest the most, and something you feel like is worth investing a lot of time in, Kotlin, for me and for anybody interested in Android, is certainly something you should look into. And you can, if it's not Android, you can look into industry specifics for that platform. iOS adopted Swift recently, and it behooves all the iOS developers to learn Swift, and so on. There's similar things with each industry. So I guess look into the latest trends, and but always get that a good background. Object-oriented programming can scale to a lot of different industries.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually touched on that, because I know it causes a little bit of anxiety for students. Like, oh my goodness, there's so much out there. What do I pursue? But starting with a good foundation and then building it from there is really sounds like the best approach. And
one last thing I would add is when we run interviews, we don't test on Kotlin yet, but I imagine someday we would. But particularly for like junior positions, Java is typically all we expect. But you should expect Kotlin to be in your life as an Android developer.
Okay, thanks, Brett. And John, what does Willow Tree look for in developers, and what are some helpful skill sets that new or junior developers should be looking to acquire and to feature in their portfolios?
Sure. I think a big part of being a developer is actually being kind of a professional learner and a professional researcher. So I think a lot of the Google scholars listening have already taken a great step, which is showing that they're trying to learn and have motivation there. So I think that's already a great step in the right direction. We're also professional collaborators. So particularly once you kind of get to the interview stages of things, you know, people ask questions and people kind of feel like they just need to recite back the answer to this brick wall. But if you just kind of take that extra step of working with the interviewer and being like, well, what do you think about this? Here's this, what do you think? I think this might be a drawback of this approach. What do you think? Those are the best interviews, I think. So really just, you know, learning, researching, and collaborating. If you can, you know, show, not tell those things, that's what we're looking for.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So we're doing so good on time. I'm hoping that you guys are open to a few questions from our scholarship audience today. This first one's a fun one. And it is, what should, seeing as you all are senior developers, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back to when you were a junior developer? Adam?
That's a great question. So for me, it would be, don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. For me, I kind of always felt like, this is what I know. This is the sort of the foundational skills I have. I do C programming. I do Swift. I don't do front-end web development. Right? Well, no, it's again, the great opportunities to learn and get and open yourself up to other opportunities. So don't be afraid to fail, because the only way you learn is by making mistakes and growing. So it's really important to do that. And that is one thing, looking back on my career, I wish I had done more of that. And I make a focus now. I try to say, you know, it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. Just sort of go off and get outside your comfort zone and try to pursue those things that may be uncomfortable, but in a year or a few months or a year, they won't be uncomfortable, and you'll have grown and brought on so many new skills that are going to help you down the road.
Yeah, I would tell myself that too.
Yeah, something you're always working on.
Brett, what about you? If you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself as a junior developer?
Invest in Bitcoin, I think. That's a joke. Not really. But as far as like development, I guess don't be afraid of change. And that's just kind of a fact of this industry, I guess, is things change all the time. Don't be afraid to pivot. When I was in my 2-year school, I was studying Cisco networking. Turns out I didn't end up doing any of that when I got through and got into industry. But that's just something I thought was going to happen, and then things changed and it worked out. So don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid of pivoting. It's all part of the deal, I guess. And I would also echo a bit what Adam said. I always echo Adam said. He's good advice.
Agreed. And John, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time? Sure.
So I kind of noticed a pattern here, and it was the word afraid. It kept coming up in these answers, and I feel like it would for me too. I was really anxious to kind of get it right the first time, and I felt like I had a lot to prove. But I think it's important to remember that, you know, we can lean on our teammates. We can always iterate. So there's a lot of value in just kind of getting in there and seeing what sticks. So because you can't, you're gonna have to try some stuff before you really understand a problem. And kind of once you get over that hump, it's just gonna start clicking. So that I think that's what I would tell myself.
Yeah, I like to tell myself too that everybody was in this position once. Everybody had the same fears, so I am not alone. Okay, this next question from our audience kind of adds on to the one I just asked you, and it is, what should I be doing and learning along the way to become a senior developer? Adam?
So I think as you move up the career ladder, it really, the technical skills are always going to be important, but it really, I think the communication and collaboration skills really increase in their importance. And it's really important when you're working with, eventually you're working with larger and larger teams, being able to do the problem solving, right? And working through how do you resolve issues, and it was, great feedback earlier about one thing I struggled with was when code reviews started, right? No one needs to tell me about my code. My code is perfect. Well, it's not. It can be made better. And being able to take that criticism is really important. That was a great point. But really, it becomes, when you move up, when you become more senior, it really moves more into the soft skills. And it can often be overlooked, in part because it's easy to say, I read a book on, Kotlin. So now, okay, I have the foundation I need. Those soft skills can be a little harder to figure out how to actually work on and grow. But it's really what becomes more and more important. It's those people skills that really become more and more critical as you start sort of widening your influence across, larger and larger teams.
Yeah, I agree. And Brett, the answer, what should I be doing and learning along the way to become a senior developer?
Let's see. So typically being a senior dev also means you're going to be leading a group of people, a group of developers. So yes, definitely every chance you get to put yourself in front of a group of people or to lead, you should do it. And also learn how to teach. Teaching is something you can do to your buddy who's going through the same course as you, or maybe a couple years behind you, or it can be something you provide to a group. I've taught at our G2G meetup a couple of times, and it's been really great to sort of put myself out there and force myself to be in front of a group of people and to teach them what I know. And a lot of times teaching is the best way to learn something. It really forces you to research that topic, all of its edge cases, and you ask yourself, like, what questions were they going to ask me? Like, I don't want to, sound stupid, but and then the other half of that is don't be afraid to say, like, I don't know. Nobody can know everything, so it's never be afraid to say, like, oh, I'm not sure, but I can look it up in this resource. And I think teaching also helps you as a person develop leadership skills, because you're directing the classroom, you're gauging their interest, you're soliciting their feedback and questions. So it helps a lot when it comes to, I guess you'd be surprised how much of an overlap there is between being a senior developer and being a teacher. And it scales to, you don't have to teach a huge group of people either. It could be, a small group. Every once in a while we'll have like architecture reviews, and that's just one developer teaching the rest, 3 or 4 other people, like how he or she did something. So yeah, teaching is good.
Yeah. Good advice. And John, what do you think students should be doing and learning along the way to become a senior developer?
Sure. So I love that sentiment from Brett. You think you know something, so you go to teach others about it, and then you really know about it. So we kind of have these internal office hours where somebody can bring something that they just learned about, or something new, or just something that they feel like it would be good for the organization at large to know about, and they teach about it, and then you really know about it. So I like that a lot. To avoid kind of echoing some of the sentiments from earlier, I'll just throw in some kind of extra stuff. Learning to give and accept feedback, I think, is a great skill. It takes practice and thought, and it's not going to be easy at first, but I think that's a great one. And I think, especially once you get into more senior roles, kind of being okay with uncertainty. If the problems were solved already, it would be trivial and we'd be out of a job. So particularly as you advance more in your career, you're going to have to deal with more uncertainty. New things are going to come to light. And I think being able to anticipate that and really just be okay with that yourself emotionally and be able to get over those humps is going to serve you very well.
Great, thank you. So this next question is really good for those students that are out there interviewing in it. They ask, when evaluating a potential role, what kind of questions can a candidate ask to assess what kind of environment the employer offers to ensure a good fit?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, again, you have to kind of get a sense for the people you're going to be working with, because what I look for in a company is the people. Who am I going to be working with? Because the projects you're going to be working on, particularly if you're at an agency, are going to differ. So they're going to change. There's going to be a wide variety of them. But the people are more of the constant. So in those interactions, just even, you know, trying to understand if your values and what's important to you are the values of the people at the company, right? Like if I mentioned work-life balance, I obviously don't lead with that, but I think if work-life balance is important, you get a sense for what that's like. And if people value sort of that, you know, those same things you value. So having those conversations and making it a conversation when you're actually talking with folks at the companies, and understanding, you know, obviously the kind of work they do, the kind of work you want to do, how do they focus on, how do they deal with failure, right? When things don't go right. You talk to the company about, can you talk to me about a project that maybe didn't go so well, right? And see how the company reacted and make sure that feels comfortable for you. But come up with the things that you value and try to probe whoever you're talking to and get multiple perspectives, right? Obviously, you're going to be talking to more than one person. Get those different perspectives and try to get a sense really if what you value is also aligned with the company's values.
That's a great approach. Brett, what questions can a candidate ask to assess what kind of environment the employer offers to ensure a good fit?
Let's see. I would say ask about their professional development. Not every company's got that top of mind, I guess, when it comes to teaching their engineering staff things on the job. You know, obviously there's things you'll be learning on the job for whatever you're working on actively, whatever the clients are paying for, I guess. But there's also the above and beyond, the professional development, extracurricular, like how is that company going to help you better yourself as an engineer, besides what comes natural with your hourly work that you do and that you get paid for. You know, what kind of conferences will they, you know, do they offer any sort of travel stipends or certain amount of, I don't know if benefits is the right word, but just like benefits for attending conferences or technical communities? Do they value that in their, you know, as a company? And just remember that you're interviewing this company as much as they are interviewing you, and you want to make sure that this company will fit right with your life as much as that company wants you to fit in with them. So it's symbiotic. It's a two-way conversation.
Most definitely. And John, questions that a candidate can ask to ensure that they're a good fit?
Sure. I would say ask about their mentorship culture. I think kind of having a system that represents the best interests of individuals as they advance in their career and try and learn new things is really powerful. And you want to make sure that that aligns with your goals. I think Adam and Brett kind of covered a lot of my other thoughts, but I think mentorship is a big thing, especially for our Google scholars as they're looking to break into a new field.
Fantastic. Okay, now this is an interesting question. They say that the question goes, I know you talked a bit about your agencies at the start, but could you share more details? How many people work in your agencies? How large are they? And do you think they'll grow larger over the coming years?
So at YML, we have, I believe it's about 250 people worldwide. We have a headquarters in Redwood City, California, but we have offices in Indianapolis, Atlanta, and Bangalore, India. And absolutely, we are growing. So we're hiring, as was mentioned, we're also designers, QA, strategy, sales, business development, basically looking to hire in all those roles. And I would say it's a good time to be at an agency, and it's a good time to be at YML right now. There's a lot of exciting work coming in, and definitely I definitely see growth on the road.
That's good to know. And Brett, what about for at Bottle Rocket Studios? Can you share more details about Bottle Rocket and whether you see Bottle Rocket growing larger over the coming years?
Right. So we've got about 200 people on staff now, and yeah, we are certainly hiring. I'm on the list of people that deals with that. So we're very busy. Let's see, and you can inspect our website. You can look at our career page. There's plenty of job openings for iOS and Android, and we're also constantly accepting applications and hiring QA staff as the need presents itself. So we're the biggest now as we've ever been, and the company is 10 years old now. And the CEO, his name's Calvin. He's been with the company since day one, and he is committed to growing the company personally. He's a great guy, and it's always fun working with him and hearing what he has to say.
And John, what about Willow Tree Apps? How large is it currently, and what are that company's future plans?
Sure. So Willow Tree is a total of about I'll say 300 people right now between Charlottesville, Virginia, and Durham, North Carolina. We are absolutely hiring. We are absolutely growing. We just kind of made public some plans to move into new office space here in Charlottesville to accommodate even more people. Yeah, I think that about covers it. We are hiring. So Google Scholars, hit us up.
Love it, love it. Okay, and then the last 10 minutes, we have a question about your day life. Can you tell us a little bit about a day of work for you? How much of your day is actually spent coding versus other activities like meetings with staff or customers? Adam?
Yeah, so the one thing we really value at YML is hands-on technical leadership. So everyone on the engineering team really writes code, even managers. There's no question I don't write as much code as I used to, but I still love to get dirty with the code, get in there. I mean, because really the best way to really understand what's going on with the project is to be coding and living in the code. There are a lot of meetings, and it's in part because there are a lot of different projects, and the different projects are at different phases. It really depends on the phase of the projects. In the early stages, obviously, there's more meetings, less coding. But as the projects are sort of a little more mature, that changes over time. So it's a nice balance, sometimes a better balance than others. But in general, also, like when I have to learn something new, I spend my time coding in whatever that new technology is. So it's hard to give you exact percentages. And I think programmers would always say they always want to be coding more, no matter how much they're coding. We could code while we're sleeping. We would do that as well. But it's a nice balance in general between the overhead. People may call overhead, but it's the foundational stuff that gets us in there so we can do the fun work of the development and collaboration.
I love your quote. If you could be coding when you're sleeping, you would. And Brett, what about you? What does a day of work look like for you at Bottle Rocket Studios?
Let's see. So our core office hours are from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And so usually you should expect to see the majority of the office staff during those hours. And you'll notice that's not an 8-hour day. So if some employees need to come in at 10 and leave after 4 p.m. Later in the day, then they have that flexibility, and vice versa. If somebody needs to leave by 4 p.m., they have that freedom to do so. There's family needs or what have you. So core office hours are 10 a.m. to 4, and then I guess like as far as how much actual programming you do, as a junior developer, you'll end up doing a lot more. You'll spend 90 to 95% of your time in the IDE working on your code. Then the other 5% is we have like weekly code intel meetings where those are like an hour long, and we just share like what we learned that week and tips and tricks and what we should be looking for and trends in our world. And that's one of the few times you'll actually step away from your team area to do something that's not client related, but it's still beneficial in the long run. So we think it's really important. Then as you move up through the ranks or what have you, and if you're leading a team, you get more into client meetings, estimations, and they'll want an opinion on a certain idea or a process moving forward. And so that kind of takes away a little bit of time from programming. Interviewing, you know, if you're in a senior position, you'll end up grading tests or participating in the interview process. So that takes a little bit away from it as well. But by and large, even senior developers will work 80 to 90% of their time is spent working on the technical aspects of their project. So answer the question.
That's interesting. Thank you. And John, what about a day of work for you? How much time is spent coding and how much time is spent in meetings or with staff or with other customers?
Sure. So at Willow Tree, we have a set of core values, and one of them is called flow, which in a nutshell basically means that kind of state you get into and when you're working where time just kind of flies by and you're really just getting a lot done and it feels really good, and all of a sudden you look up and it's 4 in the afternoon. So we have this core value to kind of create a shared language that we can use when we talk to each other about how we plan and how we set up meetings, so that when we start talking about flow, we know, oh, this is important. This is a priority of ours, that we give people lots of time to be productive and do solid work. That being said, you know, we do stand-ups. We'll have usually a meeting every 2 weeks with the client to demo and get feedback from them. We'll have internal meetings that are, you know, a little more casual, where platform developers can work with designers, for example, to make sure that what we're developing is idiomatic for platforms and stuff like that. But in general, it is a big priority of ours to protect productive time for people and let them really get good work done without interruptions.
Thank you. Thank you all for that overview. So that was incredible information that you shared today. I personally learned a lot as someone who does not work in development, but does a lot of work alongside it. And I want to thank Adam from YML, Brett from Bottle Rocket Labs, and John from Willow Tree Apps for taking the time out of your day to join us. Thank you to everyone who tuned in for this live webinar. Thank you for your engagement. It was so great to see your energy and enthusiasm around this topic. If you're watching this as a recording, thank you for taking the time to watch. We hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. Thank you all again. Bye-bye.